Good evening. Call this council meeting to order. At this time, we will have Mr. Garber give us an invocation, and then we do have the distinct honor and pleasure tonight of having two Boy Scouts here tonight, Mark Tilley and Jack Mears, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. So would everybody stand, please, for the invocation?
Thank you, Mayor. Father, thank you for the foresight and thank you for the wisdom that you have given for our future, and especially thank you for the excellent team that you have blessed us with so that we may accomplish those goals. And Lord, we pray that you help us remember how far we've come as a city and continue to lead and guide us with grace and peace as we continue to walk. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please come down here by the podium, and then you can lead us in the pledges. Everybody face the flag. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, go ahead. Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee,
Texas,
one state under God,
one and indivisible. Thank you. Citizens' comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Comments about any of the council agenda items are appreciated by the council and may be taken into consideration at this time or during that agenda item. Council is prohibited from acting on or discussing items brought before them at this time. Are there any citizens' comments?
I didn't receive any comments, Mayor.
Pardon? No, we don't have any. None? Okay. Consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion. Should the mayor or a council member desire discussion of any item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. I'd entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move that we approve.
I second.
Any discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Business agenda. Hear a presentation, discuss, and take appropriate action to accept the annual external audit and the annual comprehensive financial report presented by Edie Bailey, LLP. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd like to have our Financial Director, Leanne Benzelmeyer, to lay out this item for you. And then Diane is also here as the auditor to speak as well.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the financial position for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021. Before I begin, I do want to recognize some staff members that put a lot of time and effort into this. We have Becky Buck, which is our comptroller. She was responsible for all our day-to-day accounting activities and putting the document together. I'm sad to say that she is retiring at the end of this month, so this is her last audit, and we're going to greatly miss her. And then we also have Jacqueline Williams here, and she is sitting in the back of the building, and she is our new Assistant Finance Director, and she's going to be taking over the accounting department for the city, and we're very excited that she has joined our team. So looking into September 30th, as I mentioned, we had a clean audit by Eide Bailey. Each year we do contract with Eide Bailey to do some adjustments for us, and these are more complicated journal entries to comply with GASB 68 and GASB 75. Those were the only entries and adjustments that were recommended by Eide Bailey. So Becky put together another very exemplary audit with no adjustments. When we look at our fund balance overall, it did grow about $10 million from 2020 to 2021. That was mostly due to the receipt of some bond proceeds that we did in 2021. And so all other funds were pretty stable as far as their fund balances. I want to dive in a little bit into the general fund. This is where all of our operations are for police, fire, and our general operating expenditures. We do have a fund balance policy that we will maintain at least 20% of budgeted expenditures. So our policy did require that we maintain about $4.6 million in fund balance. We did fall short in that in 21. We ended with a fund balance of $4.3 million. But if you will recall, this was estimated during our budget process as we did use we drew down some of our fund balance to purchase the land across the street so that we could start the commons at Agora and develop the Agora district along with the street. So our plan is to sell some of those parcels within the next year, and so we do anticipate that this would be back within the policy requirements within the fiscal year ending September of 2022. Looking at some of our major revenues, as far as sales tax was concerned, we did come in at 21% over budget at $345,000. And again, when we budgeted for this fiscal year, it was still when COVID was still a little bit unknown, and so we did budget very conservatively. And so we were very pleased that we did not have a sales tax impact like a lot of the cities did through the COVID situation. And so we were able to generate a substantial amount of revenue over our budget. When you compare this fiscal year to last fiscal year, we were still over about $172,000. So all in all, our sales tax revenues are doing very well. Our traffic fines and or traffic fees and forfeitures is our most volatile revenue source that was impacted by COVID. And during that time period, our police officers were not doing regular stopping of individuals. It was only those that, warranted to the safety of our residents. And so we did have an impact on this the prior fiscal year and in this fiscal year as well. We did have a shortage in our budget, about $81,000, or it was down about 12%. But I will tell you that as our current budget year, we are starting to see the increases in those budgets, and I don't have any cause to think that we're going to fall short within the current budget year that we're in. I think we're going to be fine. As far as our development fees and permits, as far as actual to budget, we were up almost 9% or $40,000. Again, this is another volatile revenue that comes into play depending on how much development we have as far as new homes and so forth. So to prior year, we were down $78,000 from the prior year, but as far as budget, we still came out ahead. Right now, we're tracking very well since we do have a lot of development that's going on. So I don't have any issues in the current year that we will make budget. Moving into our water wastewater fund, we do have a target of 25%. We were a little bit over our policy requirement of $2.7 million. We ended about 2.8, and that was pretty much in line with what we had anticipated during our budgeting process. Looking at our water charges, we were down about 5.5% or $454,000. It was a very mild winter in comparison to prior years. We had some rain. It wasn't as hot, and so that did affect our water sales. Looking into sewer charges, our sewer is we do sewer averaging, so our sewer charges are pretty flat, and it's very easy to budget for those. We were almost right on target. We were above 1.6% or $75,000 over budget. As far as drainage is concerned, we also have a fund balance policy there of 25% of budgeted expenditures. We had an ending fund balance of $352,000, and that was well above our policy requirements of $149,000, so still a very stable fund. And here's just a snapshot of our stormwater fee. We ended at about 1.2% below budget, or right at $9,000. So we came really close to hitting our budget numbers on this one. And then this is just a snapshot of our long-term debt at the end of September 30th. All in all, we have outstanding principal out of $58 million, and $16,000 is in interest. So our total outstanding is $74 million. When you break that out between our major funds, general fund has $61 million in outstanding debt. Water, wastewater has almost $12.9 million, and then drainage is a little bit under $1 million. And so one of the things that was new to us last year was the single audit. And basically there's federal, if you receive federal grants that exceed $750,000, you have to have a single audit. We kind of slid right underneath that threshold this year. I think in total we received about $740,000 in grant money, so we were not required to do a single audit this year. But due to the ARPA monies that we received this year, then we know we're going to have to do a single audit next year. But those funds were received in December, so they were not inclusive in this audit period, but we can expect that again in the 2022 fiscal year. Before I turn it over to Diane Terrell to give the audit report, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Is there any question from council? Thank you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Just to give you a brief summary of our audit opinion. First of all, we do appreciate the opportunity to be here and to perform your audit. And it's been a pleasure serving your center and especially working with Becky and your finance department. I do want to commend the finance department for their efforts in making the audit run very smoothly. As Leanne said, we did not propose any audit adjustments as a result of our audit procedures, which demonstrates what an excellent job your finance department does in keeping the books very clean. And we will miss working with Becky. I have to mention that. We do look forward to working with Jackie or Jacqueline. Not sure. Okay. So anyway, in our auditor's report, we do report an unmodified opinion. That's the terminology we use for a clean opinion, that your financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for governmentals. As Leanne mentioned, this year you were not required to have a single audit, which is an audit of your federal and state grant compliance. But we will be doing that next year. However, many grantors still require your audit to be performed in accordance with government auditing standards. So we do issue that report separately, and it's basically a report of we did not report any instances of noncompliance with laws and regulations that would have a material effect on your financial statements in the event of noncompliance. I know that's a lot of wording, but that's basically what it says. Nor did we report any deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting. So that's where that report, if you did have any instances that we did identify, it would be reported there. Also, there's one other letter that we issue in conjunction with our audit, and that is there are certain matters that auditors are required to communicate with those charged with governance, and we already went over this with the Finance Audit Committee. However, we also, I believe y'all probably have this in your packet too, and it talks about how the financial statements does include certain estimates, such as your net pension liability or your OPEB, your post-employment benefit liability with TMRS, your account allowance for AR. We review those estimates and determine them reasonable and supported by documentation. We had no disagreements with management or any on accounting issues or regarding estimates made in the financial statements. And like Leanne said, we did not have any audit adjustments, but y'all do contract with us to propose those more complicated ones related to net pension liability and OPEB liability, since we do that for most of our other governmental entities as well. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to serve you, and we again appreciate the hard work that the Finance Department does to get ready for the audit, as well as just throughout the year. So do you have any questions relating to the audit?
Are there any questions from council? Thank you very much. We appreciate your report.
Mayor, we'll need a motion or a vote to accept the audit report.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the CAFR.
Second.
Any discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Item number 5, consider an act on a renewed interlocal agreement between the City of Corinth and the Town of Shady Shores to provide law enforcement services to residents and businesses of Shady Shores for 5 years, commencing October 1, 2022. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd like to have our Police Chief, Jerry Garner, to lay out this item for you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, Council, as you're aware, for a number of years, we have provided contract police services for the town of Shady Shores. That contract, that 5-year contract, expires on September 30th. So it's necessary to renew that if they want to continue services with us. I did a recent presentation to their council, and they approved the agreement at that point. They were very commendatory, would be, I guess, the word, for the police services they're receiving, which always makes the police chief feel good. This will be for just a little bit more than $290,000 for the first year, and then that goes up each of those succeeding years 3.5% each year. Then really what we're charging this year for services is only 8% above what they paid last year, and the difference is we're rolling animal control services into it this year. They wanted us to provide animal control. And to tell you a real very quick story, which is an example of I think why they wanted that. The night that I showed up to do the council presentation to them, a citizen was there with a complaint. And this was not rehearsed. This was not planned. He was there to complain about the animal service, the vendor they're using right now. And the story was, at the beginning of a weekend, he could hear a dog crying in the ravine behind his house. Contacted the vendor, we'll be out on Monday. And the guy, well, the dog's going to be dead on Monday. So not knowing what to do, he called the Corinth Police Department. We sent an officer. She was able to hear where the dog was. She went down in the ravine. It was getting dark now. She went down in the ravine, found the dog, had a paw caught under a root. She cut the tree root. Pretty good-sized dog. She carried the dog up the ravine and out. She was able to check the chip on the dog, and Sadie the dog was taken home that night. So Sadie made it out okay. And the citizen was really happy about that. And the timing couldn't have been better. But what we would be doing is basically, when we're patrolling, when there's an animal control officer on duty in Corinth, he or she would also be swinging through Shady Shores. And they would get the same thing that Corinth residents get as far as picking up animals that are running at large or issuing a summons to someone if necessary. They would also have after-hours service. If you have an injured animal, a vicious animal, we would respond to those calls after hours as well. So that is basically the agreement that Shady Shores has already agreed to, and staff would recommend that council approve the agreement as well. And any questions, sir?
Is there any question from council? Thank you very much.
Yes,
appreciate all your efforts for Shady Shores. This time I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
Mayor, I would move to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Corinth and the Town of Shady Shores to provide law enforcement services for a period of 5 years commencing on October 1st, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Item number 6, consider an act upon an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and the zoning map of the City of Corinth from SF3 single family to planned development -60, PD 60, with a base zoning district of SFA single family residential attached in townhomes on approximately 8.251 acres located on the west side of Corinth Parkway and north of Lake Sharon Drive. Case number ZAPD 21-0004, Timber Ridge. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd like to have our planning manager, Michelle Maxwell, to lay out this item for you.
The electrical code seems to, that's okay. It's all good. Thank you. Get acclimated here. If you recall, we had a public hearing last month, or Yes, last month, the end of last month, and where you heard the Timber Ridge plan development. We gave a presentation. I will promise to be brief in my project summary. It was actually, yes, I would. Thank you. So project located, thank you. A project located on the west side of Corinth Parkway, just south of I-35. It's 8.25 acres, 53 single-family attached townhouses. It's the first of its kind that we'll have in the city, a maximum density of 7 dwelling units per acre. If you recall, there was an alternative design presented based on findings of a flood study, so they readjusted their design between Planning and Zoning Commission and their presentation to you. A part of that project is to preserve common open space lots along Lynchburg Creek, a Muse lot that you'll see that contains a number of large protected trees, and then also open space on the west side along the road frontage of Corinth Parkway with, again, some existing protected trees. Planning and Zoning Commission held a hearing on 124. City Council held your hearing on 217. And staff and the developer made presentations at that time. We did receive public comment. City Council closed the public hearing and directed staff to prepare the ordinance. Just to refresh your memory, this is based on an SFA zoning district, would be the first SFA zoning district that's on the ground in Corinth, 14 townhouse buildings, up to 55 platted lots, though the design here is showing 53. And as I mentioned, preservation. The one thing to point out is that they expanded with their alternative design the size of the Muse lots. They eliminated 2 of their existing lots to provide for that open space. And at the direction of Planning and Zoning, they added picnic tables and a grill in this location. Most buildings will front onto an urbanist-style neighborhood streets. They'll have parallel on-street parking with bulb outs and a parkway with shade trees. And one of their buildings on the northwest side of the property will front along a Muse. The Timber Ridge PD ordinance that was in your packet reflects the concepts as presented to you at the 217 Council public hearing for the alternative design concepts presented in Exhibit B2. I can go over the reminders. Is this helpful, or would you like to jump to go? Okay, I'll just go quickly. The alternative design was stated that they would go forward with that at the meeting. The groves of trees were preserved, a new grove in a buildable area, so we considered adding additional credits for that option. And the majority of the site was found to be in the floodplain along Lynchburg Creek in the southern boundary. They are doing a CLOMR, which is a FEMA map revision. This is a quick summary. This is in your packet of an overview of the departures that are being requested. While some of the items are to reduce setbacks to create a more urban environment, meant the lot size and so forth are being increased from what is in the base SFA. Two things that I'd like to point out that the developer did change from the public hearing, and that's in your packet and it was incorporated into the PD ordinance, is they felt there may have been some concerns related to the building facade materials that they had presented, so they added clarification to their section under building facades that exterior, they put some caps that 75% of each facade, excluding doors and windows, would consist of masonry construction or fiber reinforced cement board to create a visual interest, and no more than 30% of the facade would be fiber reinforced. And so they would also have at least 4 of the following listed architectural details. So recognizing, based on the conversation, they went back to the drawing board and added this language. And then the other thing that they added to clarify and to confirm that all of the yards, the common open spaces outside of the actually even including in the individually platted lots, the front, side, and rear yards would be maintained by the homeowners association. So all of the yards and the common open space would be maintained. And one thing that I wanted to point out, at the February hearing, my staff report and presentation, I indicated that 4 neighbors offered comments of support. 4 neighbors attended, and one of the neighbors spoke on behalf. We had no one speak in opposition at that time. Staff recommends adoption of the Plan Development PD 60 for Timber Ridge as presented in Attachment 1 for your consideration.
Are there any questions from council?
The change to that language, can you go back to that?
Yes. Does that help?
Well, so if 75% of something is masonry construction materials and or fiber reinforced board, and then you say they can do 30% of fiber reinforced board.
No more than, yeah.
So are you saying that, in other words, the way I read that, up to 75% could be the fiber reinforced cementous board?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Because it's and or?
Yeah. Would you mind if I asked John Arnold to clarify the intention, and then we can maybe tweak that language?
I don't mind at all.
Or,
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Sorry, John Arnold, Scorber Company, 8214 Westchester, Suite 900, Dallas, Texas, 75225. I think the intent is the way that Michelle spoke it earlier. It's 75% are those materials. We will have 75%, but no more of that will be the fiber. No more than 30% will be the fiber reinforced cementous board.
So in the bottom photo,
I think we just take out
how much of a percent of fiberboard would you estimate are we seeing versus stone?
So one thing to point out is you're going to be probably looking closer to the one on the top than the bottom. So I think the concern at council was we didn't want to see all that fiberboard.
Right.
So I would say it's going to be much, less than 30.
So looking at the picture at the bottom, it seems as if a reasonable estimate would be the exact inverse of what you're proposing.
You won't be seeing the bottom one. The bottom one was 2 options that we had before.
Sure.
You will be seeing more like the top one. So it would be the reverse of what you were just saying. So that picture will not be in the PD as a representative product.
Okay. So I shared Sam's question with the wording of this. Is there a way that we can clean this up so that when we start building, we're not confused?
Yes.
Maybe we can. Go ahead. Could we work with Patricia tomorrow to come up with something, and with John Arnold to confirm?
Well, I think it's just the and/or part that's a little confusing. Sam, do you have a?
We might be able to work it out tonight. I did have one other question.
Okay.
What other material, other than masonry construction projects or can I just call it fiberboard? We'll know what we're talking about. Cementitious. I don't know. I don't want to have to say that many times.
Fiberboard?
Yes, the fiberboard.
Talking about masonry materials.
What else would you use?
You're talking about brick, stone, and basically the cementitious fiberboard. So when you're saying, I'm going to have 75% of each facade will have the brick, the stone, or the cementitious fiber, but we won't go over 30%. So basically, see what I'm saying? So
I think I got that part. Yeah. We just got to work on that language.
That last sentence kind of flips it a little bit. Yes, sir. I agree.
But what other material would you use?
Those are the 3 main materials. The cementitious fiber, the stone. Oh, what other materials would you use?
Correct.
You have wood. You have the windows. You You just have wood.
Okay, so if it's not the windows and it's not...
No. It's wood. It's the... Yeah. So you're not using... I guess you still have metal flashing. It kind of... Let's not get into the little pieces of it, but basically it's wood or that.
Where do y'all typically use wood on a product like this?
Just the eaves and stuff like that. So you're mostly going to be masonry, like the one on the top.
Okay, there's probably just some places where you have to use wood because it's an easier material to work with.
It's easier material to cut and work with. If you try to cut the cementitious fiberboard, you've seen it's kind of breakable and easy. So you really kind of put it across the front.
Yeah,
when you're cutting it, it's rigid, not like wood. Like wood's easier to maneuver.
Yeah. I mean, it's fiberboard. Like
it's
if you
fiberboard.
Angle cut it or do some weird things, it doesn't work.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I suggest what I think can clear this up pretty quickly? Let's do exterior wall materials. 75% of each facade, excluding doors and windows, shall consist of masonry construction or fiber reinforced cementitious board. However, in no instance shall there be more than 30% of the facade shall be fiber reinforced board. Let's take out the word to create a more interest. So just combine the two sentences. We can do that.
I think that works too. And one more question. When I read the word facade, is that the whole exterior or just the street-facing front? Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir. When we go to make this motion, do we need to include the edited language or?
Yes, you'll need to approve it with the change to the, whatever the section 4 is on the building facade material standard.
And I would anticipate that we would need to read those changes.
Yes, that's one of the reasons that we brought this back.
Sure.
In this fashion was because.
So if we can,
make sure the ordinance was
absolutely. So if we can have somebody who jotted that down.
I think this is it, but John will jump in. 75% of each facade, excluding doors and windows, shall consist of masonry construction materials and fiber fiber reinforced cement board. Period. However, in no instance shall less than 30 or no however in no instance shall more than 30% of the facade be fiber reinforced cement board. Did you guys get that? Hopefully.
No, I did not write that down. But you have it written down, don't you?
Not exactly, but yes, I will in just a moment. Did you get it, Patricia?
75% of each facade, excluding doors and windows, shall consist of masonry construction materials or fiber reinforced cementitious board.
Period.
I
However.
didn't put a however. In no instance shall more than 30% of the facade be fiber reinforced cementitious board.
Yes.
Michelle, I have a question real quick on the variances that they want, like on setback, deviations. Can I see those?
Mm-hmm. There you go. There we go. It's on 2 pages. So the front yard is being decreased to pull the buildings closer, and they're putting the shade trees in bulb outs that would normally be in the front yard along the streets and in some of the open spaces. And they'll have ornamental trees in the front.
They're all rear entry, right?
Correct. They're increasing the minimum lot area to 2,000 square feet from what's permitted at 12,250. Increasing the minimum floor area of the building to 1,300 from 1,000, basically. Increasing the buildable area of the site to 80% versus 55. They are decreasing the separation between the buildings, which is customary in urban design, from 30 to 10. And rather than the brick screening wall that goes along more of our traditional neighborhoods, they're requesting the ornamental fencing. And they'll have opaque shrubs planted at the time. They're requesting to count their 3 large existing trees that are in the landscape edge buffer along Corinth Parkway to count toward their landscape requirement. They're requesting a complete redesign in terms of the local street, so that it is a new urbanist style with parking on street. In terms of tree preservation, they have a whole list of standards that they went through and tested out an earlier version of our sliding scale, and have committed to preserving 20% on site, and have offered to give up any of the standard deduction if they, for whatever reason, would need to go below that. And they're requesting a deviation from the currently we require that all lots front onto public streets, so we're allowing them use lot.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Garber.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can you go back just one slide? Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure when I distill this down. So the current maximum density allowed is 10 units per acre, and they're suggesting about somewhere between 7 and 8.
Yeah, 7 gross, and then when you net everything out.
20 to 30% less dense when we're counting buildings than what's currently
permitted in the SFA, which is a new district that will go on the ground versus what is there currently.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? If not, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I would move to approve ordinance number 22-03-17-10, adopting the Timber Ridge Plan Development PD 60 as presented in attachment 1, however, with the clarification to...
Well, I'm trying to finish right now, I'm sorry. It took me a minute to find it in here.
Dramatic pause. Can you scroll back to that?
I will.
It took me a minute to find it in here.
With change to Section 4, UDC Subsection 2.09.04, Building Facade Material Standards, and they shall apply except as modified as follows. 75% of each facade, excluding doors and windows, shall consist of masonry construction materials and or fiber reinforced cementous board. However, no more than 30% of the facade shall be fiber reinforced cementous board.
Yes, and I think we took out the and instead of the or, if I could clarify that.
Okay. So, shall consist, the first sentence shall consist of masonry construction materials or fiber reinforced cementous board, period. However, however, no more than 30% of the facade shall be fiber reinforced cementous board.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Item number 7, consider an act on an ordinance amending the City Code of Ordinance, Chapter 150, adopting the 2021 International Construction Codes with local amendments, standards, and certain appendices, including the Building Code, Residential Building Code, Fire Code, Plumbing Code, Fuel Gas Code, Mechanical Code, Energy Code, Existing Building Code, Fire Code, Property Maintenance Code, and the 2020 National Electrical Code, NEC. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd like to have Cleve Joyner, our Chief Building Official, to lay out this item for you.
It's my new prop manager.
We don't have to read all those, do we?
Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to some of the staff that enforces these codes. We have David Rodriguez from the Fire Marshal's Office. We have Lance Baker, who's our Chief Building Inspector, and we have Jared Bird, who is our Building Inspector as well. Shelley McCain is our Code Enforcement Officer. She couldn't make it tonight. You've all met her in the workshops. And then we have Karen Dunham, who runs the counter and manages all of the permits that come in. I would like to say that these folks are the eyes and the ears out there meeting with the public, talking with the residents, talking with the builders and the contractors, and making sure that which 85% of these codes are life safety, that not only do our constituents get the product that they expect, but they're also safe and deemed safe. They have that ability, and they also, working with the contractors, are teaching the contractors what our expectations are, and also measuring the 30% facades. So they're out there doing that, and they have that ability. These folks, in their career, will save many lives with what they do. And occasionally, they have to operate on modifying behaviors, which that works quite well sometimes, too. So we have these codes. These codes are a 3-year process. Every 3 years, the International Code Council and the NEC, which are kind of off 1 year on their cycle, but they're all 3-year cycles. We go through an international reading, which right now, currently, the international is a meeting on the 2024 codes, which I'm part of that international process, and those are coming up. But after 3 years, those codes are adopted, and then they are passed on to the North Central Texas Council of Governments. That council has individual groups that handles each one of these codes, and then also a master group, if you will, that overlooks all of the code and the code recommendations as far as amendments. And then those are passed through the board, which the mayor is part of that board, and they're given their approval, and then they're sent out to the cities. So in essence, it's about a 4-year process from start to finish. Once we get those, we take them. We also look at and we sit with the fire department and we go over local ordinances and local changes. I'm real happy to say that in our last code cycle, there were 3 items that were specific to Corinth that are now part of the national code. So we didn't have to adopt those years because they're built into these documents. And that's kind of the influence that Corinth has, and it's worked really well. It's something to be proud of. In your backup documentation, I talked extensively about why this matters. That 3-year cycle, if you get past that 3-year cycle, the Insurance Service Office can deem you as not being acceptable and lower your rating. Now, we have an ISO rating similar to what the fire department has. That ISO rating for the building codes can also affect the fire code. The Insurance Service Office, as you know, establishes the insurance rates for our communities and our local communities. That could be affected with a trickle-down effect that wouldn't be pretty. So we try very hard to have those codes in place, make sure we meet that 3-year cycle. And in my backup documentation that I gave you, I was proud that this building division is comparatively, with its standard and its rating, above the state and the local average. So we're doing very well here in this city. I'm sure I've left something out, but I won't trouble you with any more. And I would just ask that you adopt these codes so we can move forward and build a safe community.
Are there any questions from council? I will concur. Serving on the COG board, they do get very much involved in these codes, and it's a very important element, and they have some real experts down there that are going through there and fine-tuning it and making sure it all meets certain specs. So appreciate that. If not, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve ordinance number 22-03-17-11, adopting the 2021 International Construction Codes, the 2021 International Fire Code, and the 2020 National Electric Code with the local adjustments and standards.
I second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Item number 8, consider an act on the ordinance of the City of Corinth, Texas, canceling the May 7, 2022 General City Council election, providing an issuance of certificate of election, and declaring each unopposed candidate elected to office. Mr. Hart.
Mayor and Council, this ordinance applies to the general election for the City Council of offices. It does not apply to the charter amendment election that we'll have on that May 7th ballot. The other item I would point out is that while the council elections are canceled, you'll not be able to be sworn in until after the canvassing date for the state election code, which will be on May the 18th. And so then we'll do the swearing in at the council meeting following that, or we'll have a canvassing meeting somewhat through that week.
Okay. Any question? Not, I entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I would move to approve ordinance number 22-03-17-12, canceling the May 7th, 2022 General City Council election, providing for issuance of certificate of election, declaring each unopposed candidate elected to office.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Now we'll be going into public hearings. Item number 9, conduct a public hearing considering an act on a request of amend the City of Corinth's Comprehensive Plan, Envision Corinth 2040, to amend the future land use and development strategy map by changing the designation of lots 1-11, approximately 6 acres, within the Lake Vista Business Park subdivision located on the north side of Lake Sharon Drive, formerly Dobbs Road, between I-35 and Mayfield Circle, with the mixed residential place type to the office employment place type, and consider directing staff to prepare an ordinance of the same CPA 21-001 mixed residential to employment office. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, before I ask Michelle to come forward, Catherine is here gathering forms for folks that want to speak during any of the public hearings tonight, and that could be on items 9, 10, or 11. So if I can pause just for a moment, and then while she gathers those up.
City Manager, the item 9 does relate to item 10,
Yes,
but does not relate to item 11.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, and so what I'm going to have you do, I'm waiting to see where Michelle is out here. We will have, Michelle will give you a presentation on items 9 and 10 together, but you'll have a public hearing on the comprehensive plan amendment, and then you'll have a public hearing on the zoning change, and so you'll be voting on 2 different items as we go through this. And so then I would have our planning manager, Michelle Maxwell, then to lay out this item.
Thank you. Okay, so item 9 is the companion piece, as mentioned. It's the comprehensive plan amendment to the mixed residential office and employment. The subject property is this is I-35. This is what used to be called Dobbs Road. That is now Lake Sharon. This is the Millennium development. If you recall, there's an existing subdivision. It's actually an existing industrial subdivision that has been here since 2013. Whoops. And it's currently, you'll see on the next slide, identified on the comprehensive plan as mixed residential. So if you, just to acclimate again, this is I-35. This is what used to be called Dobbs Road, now Lake Sharon. It's located just on the north side. This property has an existing paved access drive and all infrastructure for commercial or non-residential uses. In 2020, this 6+ acres, lots 1 through 11, were identified as mixed residential, which is not necessarily consistent with the existing zoning, which is mixed use commercial. So there's a bit of a conflict there, which is why we're before you this evening. And it should be noted that when it was originally subdivided and the infrastructure improved, it was actually an industrial zoning district. And after it was platted and approved, the city rezoned it from industrial to mixed-use commercial in 2013. So we're requesting consideration to be more in line with the character of the area and the uses. We actually have a use, the Wayne Management Office Building. It's under construction. It's the first parcel that's been developed since 2013 in that 11-lot subdivision. So we're looking for your consideration to move from mixed residential to office employment. And you can see office employment is located just on the south side of what is now Lake Sharon Drive. So it is consistent. It's not a stretch. On February 28th, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of that request. And staff recommends approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to change from the future land use map strategy designation for those 11 lots in the Lake Vista Business Park from mixed residential place type to office employment place type, and then direct staff to prepare the ordinance of the same, an ordinance of the same. Then I'm going to go to the next one. Do they need to read the caption then?
Is there any questions from council on that presentation? Okay, go ahead.
Go straight into it, Bob? Is that okay? Okay, so thinking about where that property, those 11 parcels, we have an actual request for development on that subject property. There are 4 existing lots within the Lake Vista Business Park, again located on the north side of Lake Sharon, east of I-35, west of Millennium, and this is Mayfield Court here to the east. The proposal for the rezoning, the PD rezoning, is to develop approximately 2.2 acres, which would be lots 8 through 11 within the 11 lot subdivision, Lake Vista Business Park. It's approximately 32,000 square feet of office commercial flex space, as well as retail restaurant on one lot. So they'll eventually be consolidating these 4 lots into a single parcel. There'll be 3 buildings on the site, and they're proposing to develop it in 2 phases. One of the key points of this project is to add office commercial flex space type use as part of the PD, as well as look at new parking ratios under a shared arrangement on that single parcel. The existing site conditions, the area is vacant, the infrastructure is already in place waiting for a building. There's an existing paved, you can't really see it right here because it's under the highlight, but there's an existing paved access drive. It's a common access drive and fire access. And there's stormwater management already in place. The existing zoning, as I mentioned under the comprehensive plan, is currently mixed use commercial. It permits office, retail, and a variety of other uses, though noting that it expressly does not permit office commercial flex type use or an alternative parking ratio that's being requested by the applicant. So to accommodate this unique concept, that's why they're before you with the PD. So assuming that you move forward with the comprehensive plan amendment, it would comply with the future land use classification as noted in agenda item I-9. In the office business park, or excuse me, in the office employment future land use category, it identifies flex space as a compatible use. They talk about design requirements in terms of locating service bays, trash dumpsters, and loading areas away from the lot frontage. It encourages building articulation with the use of windows and doors, colors, changing textures and materials, and it discourages the large, expansive blank walls when facing the public street. So you'll see, especially when Bon makes her presentation, she's the architect here, how this project is in line with the comprehensive plan. Some of the key elements, the project site, as I mentioned, 4 lots to be consolidated into one. They'll come in for a replat prior to building construction. So they'll consolidate all 4. As a reminder, and I'll put it down here on the third item, last 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, you offered a right-of-way deed back to Mr. Lugenheim, who's the property owner, and that allowed for additional property to increase the area of the project. Mr. Lugenheim at the time in 2013 dedicated that right-of-way to the city, and we're not in need of that. To point out that site access in Phase 1 would be off of the existing fire lane common access drive, one on Lake Sharon, formerly Dobbs Road. At some future point when this Lake Sharon extends through I-35, this will become Carpenter Road. It's labeled here, but for the time being, it is actually a continuation of Lake Sharon, but there'll be 2 access points in those locations. As part of Phase 2, they're requesting to have an additional access drive as a main entry into their site. As I mentioned, it'll be constructed in 2 phases. Building 2 will be the first. Building 2 will be the first. It's located in the center of the site. They'll be building all of the parking as well as installing the landscape edge buffer as part of Phase 1. Phase 2 will be the 2 bookend buildings, smaller on either side, and they contain retail and restaurant in the 2 front spaces, as well as retail within the central portion of on the first building. In terms of parking, the shared parking concept, this was vetted by Cleve, our chief building official, who has a model. I won't pretend to even understand all the magic that goes into this shared model, but he plugged all of their square footage in, and we came up with different ratios based on the square footage they're proposing. So with the commercial office flex space, it assumes that a minimum and up to a maximum of the principal use with the remaining area would be occupied by the principal use, with the remaining space being comprised of storage or warehouse, activity space, or showroom. And I should note that warehouse is defined differently in the PD. It's not an intense warehouse that we currently permit in our ordinance. And they would be parking in this instance at a 1.5 to 1,000 square foot ratio for parking. And they're also requesting a change for restaurant use, which would assume 1 space per 100 square feet. So that's a departure. In staff's opinion, it's much easier to understand because our current ordinance is 1 per 4 tables, I think it is. So this is a good departure. Some key elements that happened after the P&Z motion, which required bollards to be added in front of the roll-up doors, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment. The blue highlighted areas show bollards that would be located in front of glass roll-up doors where the restaurant and retail spaces were imagined. The roll-ups being, you could see the activity taking place as you're walking along the sidewalk or whatnot. The bollards with yellow show, the yellow areas show bollards in front of blank roll-up doors. And that will become important on on a slide coming up. In terms of building facade, and I might have to ask John for help on this one, if you have detailed questions, the building facade would be unified among the 3 buildings. 70% of the facade would include a combination of brick, stone, or stucco with 30% architectural metal and ephes, which is similar to stucco, but we would limit that material to 8 feet above grade. They're requesting a unified sign plan, which would allow them to have 2 signs at the access points to their existing drive along the fire easement, and we're limiting that to a maximum of 5 feet in height. The one other item that they're requesting is a reduction from 40 feet along Lake Sharon, which is our current setback, to 30 feet to allow the buildings, the 2 bookend buildings in particular, to come closer to the street. The larger building in the center is at the 40 foot. These are just some architecturals, and I know that Bond will go over this in more detail. A summary of the departure request. The existing base district currently permits some nuisance activities. They're specifically defining that nuisance activities would not be permitted within their development. Our current ordinance permits outdoor storage display. They're specifically prohibiting outdoor storage and display. They're adding a new office flex, as I mentioned. They're adding additional uses to the PD that are compatible with the trends for commercial office, and that's detailed in your packet. They're eliminating any discussion of accessory building. They're, as I mentioned, reducing the setback on Lake Sharon. They're also just putting in place the mention that no curbing would be required within this subdivision. At the time that the infrastructure was put in place for Lake Vista Business Park, the stormwater management was sheet flow, and it did not contemplate curbing. So we're just defining that because our UDC requires it. They conducted one neighborhood meeting to seek input. No neighbors attended. That was on December 15th. As of the date of this report, we received no letters in support or opposition from the property owners located within 200 feet. In terms of compliance with the comprehensive plan, it would be, in our opinion, provided that we approve the office employment. And on February 28th, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended a 4-to-1 approval of the PD, requesting that the following stipulation. The first stipulation was staff. The phasing plan was not correct, so the applicant has revised that, showing the landscape edge buffer installed along Lake Sharon. And they're going to be correcting the exhibit numbers. And then finally, the Planning and Zoning Commission asked that bollards be installed in the parking spaces located at the front of the roll-up doors. Applicant has addressed stipulations 1 and 3. Exhibit numbers will be corrected on number 2. And then clarification on the P&Z motion, bollards to be installed in front of roll-up doors. And let me show you the next slide. The P&Z motion did not distinguish between glass roll-up doors or blank roll-up doors, the overheads, though the discussion leading up to that related all to the glass doors. So we are asking that, the applicant is asking that City Council consider the removal of the bollards highlighted in yellow, that would be in front of the roll-up doors that are not glass. Staff recommendation would be to approve the revised concept plan, which shows the removal of the bollards in front of the roll-up overhead doors, and then direct staff to prepare an ordinance of the same. And the applicant is here and has a presentation. Thank you.
Are there any questions of council before the...
I've got a quick question for City Manager. Is this property inside the TOD proper, or is it just on the border?
No, it's not in the TOD at all. I don't believe it's even within the TERS. Now,
The original red coloring with that little bit of purple outline, it was hard to tell, as we have mixed use TOD.
The TOD doesn't go it doesn't go south of Lynchburg Creek. It crosses up there to the north.
That's where I was confused. Thank you.
You can see there was a little area designated as mixed residential. Yeah. While I go through to get to Bond's presentation.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Please state your name and your address for the records, please.
Ban Al Ali with Alias Architects, 903 18th Street, suite number 229, Plano, Texas. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle, covered a lot of the items that we wanted to discuss. So we are requesting, rezoning for lots 8 to 11 of Lake Vista Business Park to create the Corinth Business Park PD. And we are, we are anticipating that the development or the intention of the development is going to be used for a mixed land uses. And we anticipate that it's the intention of the development is going to be to promote and continue the character of the nearby uses, and also it's in line with the city vision, City of Corinth vision, and their Envision 2020 to continue for Lake Sharon, the character of Lake Sharon Drive. The development will consist of retail and offices. So it'll consist of restaurant, general office, office flex, showrooms. All these local. It will serve the local community. Small businesses oriented, and it will serve the local community surrounding the development. So I think Michelle covered, because I wanted to emphasize that the development, when it first platted, it was light industrial, and then it moved to it was changed to mixed commercial, and we are deviating, we are complying with most of the mixed commercial zoning requirements, but we are specifically tailoring the zoning to our intended uses. So that's why we're asking for the PD. The site plan consists of 3 buildings. So two smaller buildings on the east and west, and the middle is going to be the a larger building. We anticipate the retail would be mostly on Lake Sharon Drive, in all the 3 buildings, and the back side is going to be for the offices, more service-type businesses in the back. We are also, in compliance with the landscape, the MXC, and in most of the requirements in the MXC zoning for landscaping, the buffer zone on Lake Sharon, and Carpenter or Lake Sharon, as well as the interior parking landscape requirement. So we are exceeding the requirements. I think the requirement is 10% of the lot should be landscape. We are exceeding that. The phases is going to be 2 phases. So we are going to be, the developer is going to be building the all the landscape buffers with all the parking spaces, in addition to the middle building. We are So these are the elevation. This elevation is from Lake Sharon. So we thought of putting a lot of glass area, which is representative of the retail uses. So a lot of glass areas, and some some shading also on the windows. The materials that we're going to be using, brick and stucco mostly, but we are also incorporating a little bit of modern materials like the architectural metal. And on the easements, on the fire easement, we are also we tried to incorporate a little bit of glass, so it's even if it's like an office flex space, but we also wanted it to look nicer, let's say. So these are the elevations, basically, from the, this is one of the smaller buildings, building 1, which is on the west side. And so, we'll see the, the amount of glass, and also the buildings on Lake Sharon. We try to incorporate, in addition to the landscape, some paved areas for outdoor seating. In case, it's just, even if it's not restaurant use, we're trying to incorporate some, activities, or enliven the area of Lake Sharon by using, a lot of those outdoor seating areas. This is building 2, which is the middle building. Also, on Lake Sharon, on the south side, we are incorporating a lot of, like I said, the retail type look with, with stucco and brick. And we are also in compliance with the articulation, building facade articulation, so we don't have all the buildings lined up on the street. We have, some buildings, the building 2 is a little bit recessed back, and like I said, with, some additional outdoor seating up in front of the 2, buildings on the east and west. On the retail side, also, we try to incorporate some of the glass, so it doesn't look very rigid and boring. So we try to use those glass roll-up doors. In case for a retail or restaurant, it would be an opportunity also for a indoor-outdoor connection. This is this is the view from Lake Sharon. And looking at the buildings with the outdoor seating and and the materials, the articulation of the facades. This is from the east, so we're trying to do these glass doors in addition to the just regular loading unloading metal doors. That's the view from from the fire easement on the office. So again, we're trying to incorporate also some. Storefronts, so it's not going to be just a blank of big wall facade. We are doing some some metal, some architectural metal, in besides the brick and the stucco on this facade. This is again from Lake Sharon on the building 2, which is in the middle. This is showing the outside areas, seating areas. We are allotting for restaurant use and the retail. This is an example of of a similar development that the developer is under construction in Little Elm, and he used the same concept of retail. So this is a retail buildings, and in the back it's the office, more service type. Uses office, flex showroom, and warehouses. So this is how it looks. And and this is also example of the architectural metal materials. Nowadays, a lot of people are using the metal because it's it has different we can add a little bit of color, a texture, and and it's a more modern feel. In addition to the stucco and the brick, just to make it so more interesting. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
Now, are there any questions from council?
I do. I have 2 questions. On your roll-up doors that are not glass, yes. What do those look like? Are they just a metal garage door? Are they decorative at all?
Well, they're going to be just like a regular insulated metal roll-up doors.
Okay. Also, your dumpster containment, they're in the parking lot?
They are in the parking lot, and they are going to be enclosed.
Enclosed with brick or?
Yes, yeah. That's per the ordinance, or the yeah. So
do they have a gate on the front, or are they open?
They're going to have a gate also.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. At this time, I will open this public hearing up for the ordinance change, which is item number 9. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to item number 9 as far as our ordinance change? No? Okay. Item 11. Yeah, item 11. All right. On item number 9, I close the public hearing on ordinance changes, and I would entertain a motion on that item.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use and development strategy map designations of lots 1 through 11 with the Lake Vista Business Park subdivision from mixed residential place type to the office employment place type, and to direct staff to prepare an ordinance of the same.
Second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Okay. At this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing for the zoning, item number 10 on the agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to item number 10 as it pertains to the zoning changes? If not, please come to the... Is there anybody? Nobody? Okay, then I'll close the item number 10, zoning change public hearing, and I would entertain a motion on that item.
Mayor, I would move to approve item 10, zoning change to Lake Vista Business Park lots 8 through 11 to approve as presented and direct staff to prepare an ordinance of the same.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Okay, item number 11. Conduct a public hearing, consider an act on a request to amend the zoning classification from SF4, single-family residential detached, to a planned development with a base zoning district of SF4, single-family residential detached on approximately 9.65 acres, generally located on the south side of Lake Sharon Drive and east of Park Ridge Drive, and consider directing staff to prepare an ordinance of the same. Case number ZAPD 22-001, Taylor Estates. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd like to have our Planning and Development Director, John Webb, to lay out this item for you.
Getting our PowerPoint wrapped up. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I realize this is the first time since I started in October that I'm able to come up and speak with you. I think Bob was hesitant with my youth and inexperience that I could be able to provide a zoning case to you, but I appreciate the opportunity. Let's let him get our PowerPoint up.
He's asking that you use the clicker to go to
Okay. Go down, all right, down, okay.
next one.
Okay, great. Okay, Mayor, I'm going to move through my presentation fairly quickly. I know the applicant is here tonight also with presentation, and I'm certain we have some public comments. So as I move through it, be sure and stop me if you have any questions. As referenced on the agenda, this is a request to amend the zoning on the property to create a planned development district. It'll be for 44 detached single-family homes, a conventional neighborhood style. There is single-family development surrounding the site to the south and to the east, and as you know, the Ashford Park development that ultimately will consist of 455 lots is being developed to the north and west. Again, the existing zoning is SF4. The applicant's requesting to keep that as the base zoning district. The area is shown on our comprehensive plan as a mixed residential. That area designation allows for a density of 6 to 10 units per acre. The density for this project will come in about 4.5 units per acre. We'll get into a little bit more of the details, but overall, again, maintaining the SF4 district, but allowing for some deviations, and that is reducing the lot area from 7,500 to 5,000 square feet, reducing the lot width from 70 feet to 50 feet, reducing the front yard setback, including the garage door, from 25 to 20 feet, and reducing the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet. Not part of the zoning, but the site concept plan does show that there will be ultimate need for right-of-way dedication along Park Ridge. That will come, Lake Sharon and Park Ridge. That will be part of the platting process. So the right-of-way dedication is really not for discussion tonight. That'll be before the Planning Zoning Commission when they discuss the plat for the property. There will be a detention area on the north side of the site, and as we'll talk more about it, the applicant did add a common open space area. The applicant provided these type of home elevations. It's our understanding that Guillen will be the primary home builder in the area. Again, there's the site plan on the left. Again, I won't go over all the departures in detail again. I think I enumerated most of them. They are increasing the size of the home from a minimum of 1,500 to 1,800. I think that's just general market conditions. As you'll see, they're increasing the maximum building coverage up to 58%. And again, we'll talk about the garages. The garage setback would be 20 feet from the property line, which typically is a sidewalk, versus the required 25 feet. So in talking about the garage doors, when I found out from the applicant that there had been quite a bit of conversation with the planning staff before my arrival that there was an allowance to let the 20-foot front setback go forward. That's always been a real issue with me and the cities I've worked with, because typically, again, that setback line is measured, from the face of the garage door to about the edge of the sidewalk. A lot of the pickup trucks that people drive are a little over 19 feet long. And so unless somebody pulls right up to the front of the garage door, the edge or the back end of that vehicle is going to extend in the sidewalk and become a code issue for us. So that's been my concern from day one. I told the applicant I'd respect the fact that he spent a lot of time with the planning staff on the design and subdivision with the 20-foot setback versus a 25. Fortunately, though, when you put a narrower house, you put basically this will be a 40-foot wide home on a 50-foot pad, a 50-foot wide lot, 50-foot lot. The garage door seems to dominate. So one of the tools that I've used in other communities is try to soften that look. And so the applicant has agreed that he would use some alternative design on the garage doors to give them that cedar-clad look for that. And there's some pictures that actually those doors are not cedar doors. As you know, cedar is a little bit harder to maintain, but they give that look for that. So I just wanted to point that out, that the applicant did agree to do that. The Masonry Standards, they've agreed to 80% of the home's total exterior area would be masonry, and that would be the brick, stone, and stucco. It would not be EIFS, so this would be the cementatious troweled-on stucco and not the EIFS. And again, some representative types of the homes that they've built. As far as the screening, they will do the traditional brick wall screening along Lake Sharon Drive, with our required landscaping buffer along there. Around the detention area to the north, there will be open fencing. I think that'll give a better visual entrance into the subdivision. And then, as the P&Z recommended, they wanted to see additional open space, and so they did create an open space lot central to the area, and that will be surrounded by open metal fencing. So the homes backing up to those lots will have open open metal fencing. If a homeowner chooses that they want more privacy in their backyard, they can always plant evergreen shrubs, but otherwise it'll be open fencing around that new common area lot. We had talked about departures with the tree preservation. Those have been resolved. And we also talked about a departure about when the payment for the parkland dedication would be paid at the time of either each building permit or the very first one. Again, that's been resolved with the Planning Zoning Commission recommendation. They did do a traffic memo, not a full TIA, but a traffic memo done by a professional engineering firm. The site's anticipated to generate a little over 400 trips a day for the 44 homes. That's fairly typical. Typically a little under 9 to 10 trips per day, very typical. I think what's interesting, though, is that the impact on the morning and afternoon peak is fairly nominal, with the 32 trips in the morning and the 42 trips in the PM peak. Again, the site will not have an adverse impact on the surrounding roads. There will be, for cars entering into the subdivision from the east making a westbound turning movement, there will be a protected left turn bay for those cars turning south into the subdivision. And again, they've looked at the site visibility for the curves along Lake Sharon. They realized that is not an issue. The applicant will probably go into more detail. He did have 2 neighborhood meetings for the site. We did advertise the case in accordance with state law. We have received 4 letters of opposition from homeowners within 200 feet of the request, and we received 4 letters in opposition from the owners located more than 200 feet from the request. Planning Zoning Commission recommended approval by a 3-2 vote. Again, with the staff stipulations that I've noted before. And again, the applicant did revise that site plan to put in that common area lot. I will bring up, because I know this will be a topic of interest, the site, as recommended by the staff, will have connectivity to the stub streets to the southeastern part of the site. There's the stub street to the east and one to the south. Those stub streets have always been intended to be extended. They were not cul-de-sacs. If they were cul-de-sacs, we would not extend them. So even though those subdivisions have been there for a little time, there's always been the intent that we would extend that site into this site. It's extremely important that we have neighborhood connectivity, but even more important that we have multiple points of access for life safety issues. You know, should there be an event on Lake Sharon and the fire rescue equipment could not get in from Lake Sharon, and this could be an event anywhere along Lake Sharon, we need another point of access. Again, the more access points you have, the more traffic will be dispersed. As I've looked at the site, I don't really see the traffic from this subdivision having any really need to go into the older subdivisions. I see more of a fact that probably the people in the older subdivisions and the existing subdivisions will go through this subdivision for probably access out to Lake Sharon. But again, I believe in neighborhood connectivity. I believe that neighbors should be able to walk between other neighborhoods and have that connectivity. For that. So that's why we're recommending the connectivity for those 2 existing stub streets. You have the staff recommendation, Mayor, for approval as submitted with those amendments that the applicant has made. I know I had the public hearing up, but I knew the applicant is here and would like to make a presentation. I'm available for any technical questions now, or we can wait after the applicant makes his presentation.
Okay. Mr. Garber.
Thank you. So I can better contextualize when I see the presentation. Overall, the current zoning is SF4.
Correct.
The requested zoning is a base of SF4, but the overall allowed density is less
than what the comprehensive plan recommends. So the PD, they're using the plan development tool to get the smaller lots versus the existing zoning.
Okay. So essentially this aligns with the comprehensive plan, and for the most part the zoning, it's just some tweaking, setbacks and
basically the lot sizes, the width of the lot and the setbacks on those lots.
Okay. So if this is voted down, then something else could be built there that would essentially be a lot like this, only without some city hands being in it, suggesting different garage doors and those types of things. But the stub out, no matter what goes in over here, is likely going to be cut through.
Correct. We would still ask for that stub out. So if the zoning were not to go through tonight, they'd revert back to the base zoning, which would be the 25-foot front yard setback, the 7,500 square foot lots, and the lot width of the existing lot width. So those would be the base.
So essentially almost no change, except for because they've asked for some different setbacks and a little bit different size lot, we've been able to suggest some positive changes to the facade. And
I think the amenities, again, the garage door would be 5 feet further back if the zoning does not pass tonight, but they would not be the amenitized garage doors. They would not have to create that common open space. They could, choose just to, continue to pay the parkland dedication fee in lieu of having some of that common open space and meet a portion of that fee.
Are there any other questions for council? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation.
We have the applicant. John, would you, just make sure that they can come up and make their presentation?
Yeah, please state your name and your address for the records, please.
My name is Stephen Davis. I'm with Taylor Duncan. My address is 15441 Knoll Trail in Dallas, 75248. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. What I'd first like to start with is just a very kind of brief overview of who we are. We do have both my partners here tonight as well as our engineer from Kimley Horn, so they'll be able to participate and answer any questions that y'all may have. Taylor Duncan, we've been in business for about 30 years, developed well over 15,000 single-family lots, mainly in the DFW Metroplex area. Have ventured out a little bit into Tennessee and down into the Austin area, but mainstay has always been right here in the Metroplex. We currently have two large master plan communities. One is Arrowbrook, which is up in Denton County. One is Sonoma Verde, which is over in McClendon Chisholm. We have several smaller projects and townhome projects throughout the Metroplex that we are currently developing. I think we bring a lot of experience through all of the partners and past projects that we've done, and a lot of thoughtfulness, I think, to the communities that we do develop. This is just a little montage of some of the entry features and amenities that we've done over time. I think it really kind of shows that we like to come with a little bit more of an upscale look and a feel, more of an inviting environment, inviting curb appeal as you kind of drive up to our different communities. The project that we're talking about tonight is our latest, Taylor Estates. It's located on Park Ridge Drive and Lake Sharon. It is the red circle in the middle. As you can see, the kind of surrounding uses, we have Ashford Park up to the north and to the west. Those are some 30-foot lots and 50-foot lots. We've got multifamily up to the north, townhomes up to the north, some 30-foot product over to the east, and we're surrounded by, I think, something very comparable to what we are requesting, single family. A little bit of history of this property. This is the last tract of land that the Taylors own. The Taylor family has been a part of this community. I think they said it was in the 1860s when they first arrived, and this is their last tract of land. So with that, we want to kind of honor the family as well with the heritage that they've kind of left us with this particular tract. I know other developers have approached the city with several different land uses for this tract. There was a multifamily user. Showstopper, I guess. Yeah. Do we need to reboot, or could I just keep going?
Keep going while we get
Okay. But anyway, the history of the property, multifamily developers have come in and looked at doing multifamily here. I know one developer was a for rent, single family detached that staff didn't necessarily support at the time. Even when we came in, our first thought was, a little bit smaller lots into the 40s. But I think with a lot of time spent with staff, we've been working on this 8 or 9 months, I guess. We felt like that the 50-foot product was more commensurate with what the